and we're going to honor Father's Day today. And what's so important is that when those of us that are going through struggles or physical, mental, emotional, spiritual hardships, we are a community. We are here together. So let us put Lauren, who is recovering, in our thoughts, and let us put our wonderful Dottie Boone, Reverend Dottie Boone, who is not feeling well today. And you know she's not feeling well because she would be here, because she loves seeing all of you on the screen. She's told that to me many times. So let us all just take a nice deep breath and just send healing energy to Dottie, to Lauren. Who else needs some healing energy?
Yeah, Andrew.
Andrew.
Yeah, he just found out he has colon cancer.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
And there's our Lauren. Yay.
Fresh off the operating table.
We were just putting you in the healing circle.
And of course,
I was coming. I was coming slowly from Thornton.
we were going to let you come up on the lift.
What? Oh no, I can do stairs. It's good for my muscles to do what they do.
Well, this is wonderful. Anybody else needs some healing? We're creating this bowl of healing.
Speaking, there's Trisha going.
Trisha?
Just healing energy because I'm thinking of both my parents today, my dad especially, and then my mom. My mom's birthday was June 9th, so
Yeah.
it's hard, and my birthday was June 1st. So my mom and I always celebrated our birthdays together, and I miss them both today.
Yeah. Thank you for honoring that, Trisha.
Mm-hmm.
Let us put Trisha in the circle.
Can I put my child, my 22-year-old in?
Please
they
do.
They discovered a medical thing,
Ooh.
and so that will probably need no, there's no problem. That will need surgical intervention.
Okay, we honor them.
Jeremy has a cold, was sick yesterday, is better today, but needs to be helped healing.
Wonderful.
And
what is their name?
Oh,
Ira.
Ira. Thank you. So we put
Oh, I had a particularly rough time after my last treatment. Got another one coming up next week. And, but, I would appreciate prayers to help me with this fatigue and nausea. Hasn't been so great. The only time I felt amazing was when Jan and Bree visiting me here in Eugene. It was wonderful to have my beautiful friends here to hug, but kind of energy low and a little rough catching up with the treatments.
Okay. Absolutely, Annie. Gentling and healing of all of your bodies, that you can be peaceful and just have no side effects and just be completely surrounded by gentle love and peace. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. And all of us, this is a very powerful day. It can bring up many different things for us. When we think about Father's Day or anticipating Father's Day, it could remind us of grief. It could remind us of sweet memories, or it could remind us of difficult memories. So I just want to honor that it can be a complicated day. And one of the things that I do, my dad died many years ago, is I actually light a candle in his favorite color, and I put it by his picture, and I just put a little note to him. And that's the way I honor him on Father's Day. But we're going to talk about honoring all the ways that people father us, all the ways that people, can be that father energy. They do not necessarily have to be our bio father. And I just want to ask, are there any birthdays this week? Any birthdays?
Yours was.
It was last week, right? Absolutely.
This is your birthday song.
This is very long.
Yay! So I'm looking at Joyce C., who's one of my Gemini twins, and then, of course, Trisha, who's on
Isn't
June.
Cheryl Lewis's birthday today?
It might be.
But she's
Yes.
not here to get the song. Or
Okay,
the beads.
well, we're just going to hold on to that and to realize that this community makes a powerful difference. It makes a powerful difference, us getting together. I mean, we have Ms. Lauren in the house.
Yay!
Woo-hoo!
She just had an
I'm
operation.
so happy. She just had surgery. We were just talking about her when we were putting everybody in the circle. And that's what we have the power to do, my friends, each and every one of you. So I just invite you to take a nice deep breath. We are safe. We are in this moment. And I'm just going to sing us a little song, do a little meditation, and invite us just to relax, just to be here with each other. And just allow yourself to settle in. Just allow your body to be held in the wonderful comfort of wherever you are sitting. Just feel the breeze, a nice summer breeze blowing through your hair. And imagine that you are in the most beautiful place in nature. And it allows you to just be. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Feel the essence of the energy flowing through you and in you. And know and feel that this moment is a time for us to feel the essence of ourselves, of all of the parts of ourselves, and to know that we have both Father and Mother in us, and those good qualities, when they can be manifested, are very powerful. And so as you are feeling the earth energy flow up and the spirit energy flow down, and they meet in your heart, and there's a wind of love blowing through your heart, and with every breath you feel your heart swell, opening up, being present. With every heartbeat and every breath, we are here now. And know that we can call upon this moment of grounding whenever we need it. And whenever you are feeling the power of the earth and all of the dimensions of spirit flowing through you, meeting you where you are this moment. And all you have to do is breathe and receive. Breathe and receive. Open up my heart and let it flow, let it grow, and I breathe, and I breathe. we see. Any of the struggles, any of the hard times, remind me I am whole. Any of the moments where I felt splintered, I know with every heartbeat, heartbeat, and every breath, breath, I know that I'm here, here, and I can be alive, be alive. I am alive and filled with healing peace. And I know and I grow and I can be in peace. And we show and we grow and we are a circle of peace. Every moment, every day, I breathe peace my way. Oh, and we stand tall in our selfhood, and we claim all that we are. And with every breath we grow stronger, and we reach for the stars, stars, the stars, the stars, and the whispers of the Spirit call and bring us home, bring us home, bring us home to ourselves where we can hold all that we are today. In every way, we are here and know that you are like a butterfly. You are rising up, and the wind beneath your wings is this community. We are here for each other, and we thank Creator for this wonderful moment, for this incredible time that we can be in unity, that we can share healing, that we can share our individual light and spirit in this group matrix of power, strength, healing, and joy. And we send it to everyone who needs it, and we send it right back to ourselves. And so it is.
Oh, look at all the wonderful people. Hi, Glory.
The wonderful Glory. Oh, I saw you dancing. It was wonderful.
Okay.
So, my friends, we are here, and we have our incredible
And even more.
Reverend Dr. Ayleen Augustine,
Yay.
who is going to talk to us about Father's Day and about the times we're in. So wonderful, Dr. Ayleen. Take it away.
Well, thank
She
you
is
so
our past president. She is our vice president. She
was
is
our-
an amazing.
She was our associate pastor.
She was our associate pastor
She's
here
been
at CCL.
so
and-
many.
She is an actor, and she is a bus driver, and she is a janitor, and she is a healer. She is a shaman.
She is a gamer.
Yes. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And, it is just such a pleasure to be able to, I come to you from the future. Well, at least from the future. And I'm here to say, coming from the future, it's going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine. We live in such dynamic times, and one of the things we forget is that there are significant gifts in the most challenging of times. Yeah. And even if all we gain is the knowledge that we're going to see the other side of it, all of the worst times in your life are now a memory, which means even though you didn't know how you were going to get through it in the moment, you did. And it wasn't by accident. And as I think about Father's Day, I grew up with two of the most amazing beings in the world to me, my parents. And while my sister had a closeness with my mother, I shared a closeness with my dad. And he taught me many lessons, most of which I didn't understand at the time. But that's usually how the best lessons go. It's kind of like an IRA that matures as we mature. And then all of a sudden one day it's like, oh my gosh, my parents were really smart. Which gives me comfort because I know one day that moment will hit my sons.
Some days.
When I look back and I think about the man that my father became during the time that I knew him, and just to share, this is an image of my father with his sister and his mother.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
Him and his cowboy.
Beauty. They're all just so wonderful.
They're stunning.
And everyone always said, and in fact, my father said that I definitely took after my grandmother. And in fact, I resembled my grandmother to a point that it was irritating to him. And the reason for that was because not only did I share her looks, he said I would use glances and gestures that his mother had used. And he said that kind of irritated him. Mm-hmm. But, my father, he was, as we all are, both light and shadow. At the age of 16, he lied his way into the Korean War and experienced and saw things that no 16-year-old should ever see. And that was a part of what shaped him. He met my mother, and due to a practical joke gone bad, a lot of vodka, and Ramstein Air Force Base, I exist. My parents never dated before they got married. And it literally was, my father was trying to pull a practical joke on my mother by proposing to her and expecting her to say yes, of course, being the, confident creature my father was. She said no. And so every time he was drunk, he would keep asking her, thinking that he would still get the joke out. Well, on the last time, my mother saw another woman paying attention to my father, got jealous because she was drunk, and accepted his proposal. And before either one of them could pull out of it, everybody was screaming that they were getting married. General Benjamin Davis walked in and said, "Oh, well, I hear you two are getting married," and neither one wanted to admit it was a joke. They ended up married. And they grew, my mom always said that her and my father grew to love each other because that's what they were always meant to do. And through most of my childhood, my father was away. He was not physically present in my life because he was overseas. My mom, because at that time it was a court-martial offense even for a married woman to be pregnant. So my mother left the service. And one of the things that I found out later was that my father was tremendously jealous because when he would come home and he would tell us to do something, we would look at our mother as if needing verification. And I had no idea how vulnerable my father was. Well, quite honestly, because men weren't allowed to be vulnerable. They weren't allowed to show their pain. They weren't allowed to express themselves unless they were with other men. And I know that was a very hard thing because I also know my father was a very sensitive man. He was and will probably always be the most powerful empath that I have ever known. And he trained me. He would take me to events and he would ask me, okay, point out the most powerful man in this room. And I would look at him and say, well, that's you. And he would smile and he'd say, well, other than me. He said, I want you to point out the most powerful man in the room. And I'd look around and there was a guy who, was going around and shaking hands and talking to everybody and everybody was patting him on his back and all of that stuff. And I said, well, him. And he said, no, it's not. And so then he'd look at me and he'd say, no, I want you to feel it. Feel who is the most powerful man in this room other than me. So I would close my eyes. And it was through these lessons that I started to learn how to extend my feelings, to connect, to resonate. And I pointed at a man who was sitting in a chair. And I said, him. And my dad smiled. And he said, you're right. And I said, well, but how do you know? And he goes, well, first you feel it. He said, and second, the most powerful man in the room is not the one walking around. It's the one who sits, who everybody walks to. And it was in that lesson that I learned that strength isn't about what you show, it's about what you are. You can shake as many hands and you can tell as many jokes. You can be the center of attention, but that doesn't make you the most powerful. It does not make you the most centered. It does not make you the most empowered person. It is the one who can sit in their own power, in their own authority, and others are drawn to them. And I remember the only time I ever actually saw my father cry was when I was very young, and it was after my dad got back from Vietnam. And my mother had told us, well, just don't walk quietly around your dad. I mean, whenever my dad came back, and my mother, who was such an amazing partner, for somebody who did not date with him before they were married, they didn't even know each other. But their spirits were drawn to each other. My mother knew my father in a way that she was able to explain to us. It's like, okay, because she knew if we walked up quietly up behind my dad, that would not go well. It was not back in the days where PTSD was something, they usually referred to it as shell-shocked. And the answer that they were told was, well, get over it. Forget about what happened. And as I said, my father started witnessing war at 16. So there was a lot that was deeply seated in him. And one day I walked into his study, and he was sitting in his chair. And I had been in there earlier and I'd left to go do something. And then I was coming back and he was crying. And I said, Daddy, what's wrong? And he just looked at me and he said, I missed you. And in my mind, it was like, But I just left. I was here a little bit ago. But I could tell by his energy that he didn't need me to say words. I just went up and I hugged him and I held him. He stopped crying and we moved on. And in that, I learned both that it was important to have somebody who understood when words were not required or necessary. He didn't need me to say anything to him. He just needed me to be there for him in silence so he could do the work within himself that he needed to do, yet not be alone. I remember a time after my dad retired, which him choosing Milpitas was very interesting, and I didn't put the dots together until I was an adult and actually had someone who was military explain it to me, that the reason my father chose Milpitas to settle in, back in the late 60s, early 70s, was because he knew that Moffett Field was a target. He wanted us within the radius of the first blast so that we would feel nothing. From that, I learned that sometimes we have to make choices that we feel is the best for those around us to not suffer, but we are the ones who carry that. He knew, but he didn't want any of the rest of us to know. For us to be happy so that if something happened, we'd never know it. It would happen quickly. But he knew that that was probable, that was possible. Another time, again, after the retirement, we were washing dishes. And, my father always said, it's like, Dad, why don't we get a dishwasher? And he said, I've got 2 dishwashers and 2 dish dryers. Why do I need a dishwasher? He goes, why do I need a remote? I tell you, one of you go change the channel. You go change the channel. He was very practical in those days. In fact, after we all moved out, he got a dishwasher and he got a TV with a remote. But we were washing dishes that day, and I was not the most coordinated of children. And I was very nervous, and I was handling a glass, and, my father, being the amazing empath that he was, he sensed and he just looked at me and he said, what's wrong with you? And I looked at him, and I was like maybe 8. And I said, I don't want to drop it because then you'll be mad at me and you might not love me.
Wow.
And he stood there and he looked at me and he said, I will love you forever. And there is nothing you can do that would make me not love you. Why I chose to do what I did in the next second, I looked at him. I took the glass and I threw it to the floor.
Yeah.
Shattered. And I stood and I looked at him. The first expression on his face was surprise. But then I could feel him reaching out. I could feel that he saw that was not an act of defiance, but a desperate act of a child who up until then had not been fully connected with him, who needed to know he loved her. I was asking him in that moment, in my little 8-year-old brain, to prove it.
Mm.
And he looked at me, and he went and got a broom, and he swept everything up, threw it away. He said 2 things. 1, I will love you forever. And 2, don't tell your mother. So yeah, that was his theory. If he ever broke anything, it was like, what? Nobody knew anything. Or he'd blame one of us, one of the 2. But through that, I learned that unconditional love is very easy when we're feeling loving. When that is challenged, That is the true test of who we are. I mean, nobody can be that best, ultimate highest form of themselves all the time. We're going to get mad. We're going to get frustrated, and the true measure of who we are is what we do after that moment of frustration and what we do right before it. Because there comes a point, up to a point, we still have choice. And then afterwards, we have choice. Right in that minute, maybe. But he taught me in that moment, he didn't need to know why I did it. I'm sure he kind of perceived it. But he never asked me, why? Why did you do that? Which would be a normal reaction. Why did you do that? He didn't need to ask. Afterwards, he never even asked me about it later. But that was that moment between us. I needed him to, without telling me he loved me, to tell me to show me. And that was a very special moment between us. When I think about all the things that I learned from him, so many dealt with, how do I be a good companion for a man? The whole time I was going through my childhood, all I wanted to be was a mommy. That was it. I wanted to be a mommy because my mother was my example. And my father, who did grow up in he grew up in the 1930s, and there were certain social norms. And he used to tell me he didn't make it a sexist world, but he would teach me to thrive in one. So I learned I actually walked with books on my head. I actually had a little bell hooked to my waist, and my father would tell me, I want a gentle tinkle. I do not want to hear Big Ben. So as I walked, I learned to walk. I learned to be a hostess. I learned to be witty, but not quite as witty as my husband. I learned the proper duration of time to hold a handshake with anyone who was in a superior working position to my husband, and when to even shake hands. And yes, there were many parts of that many would say, that's outrageous, that's horrible, that's terrible. And I learned how to function in every environment. These were tools that were in my toolkit that I knew I could choose to do that. And marrying into a very uptight Sicilian family that wasn't so keen on the little round brown woman. Well, I wasn't that round back then, but the little brown woman marrying into the family, that was a whole bunch of issues because they all grew up in the 30s and in some cases the 20s. So I had to face an environment that I had to integrate into. And based on what he taught me, I had the tools to be able to not just go in and be accepted. I was embraced. I was loved. Now, growing up Catholic, my father was a devout Catholic, although he did not go to church, which he said, God understood that he prayed at home. My mom took us to church, which pretty much that was the norm back then. But my father did, he firmly believed in God. Growing up in the heart of the French Quarter meant he was also connected to a world of magic. The Haitian roots, the voodoo roots that he carried, which it was very interesting because when my sister was very young, she had a fever that would not go down. And I remember seeing my father do something with a potato. And he did a prayer over it, and he sliced it, and he soaked it in something, and he put it at my sister's feet. And within hours, the potato had turned completely black, and my sister's fever was gone. I was mentioning this to Akeem, and I started saying, and my dad took a potato, and Akeem described the rest of what my father did before I
Wow.
could. And he said, no, your father was a very powerful man. And, you know, those little bits of things that I was kind of spoon fed my entire life, it brought to mind so many times when I wondered what to do. And I could hear my father's voice. He always said, whenever we were going anywhere, remember who you are, which while I was growing up, I resented. It's like, look, I am under enough pressure, okay? I don't want to have to walk around being Al Augustine's daughter. I'm not your billboard. And he said gently, yes, you are. You reflect me. And I didn't understand that what he was teaching me was the value of my name, the value of my family's name. That you walk with your ancestors, you walk with every member of your family. And when you act as if they were all there right next to you, watching what you do. He said that my name, either spoken or my signature, were gold. And I don't apply either one and offer either one to anything that I don't understand, that I don't agree with. He had so many insecurities, and again, that he wasn't allowed to show. Vulnerabilities. When our dog died, the first family dog that we had, that broke something in my father. And when we got another puppy, and at first he was like, he didn't want anything to do with it. Well, it was as if the puppy knew that he was the one to win over. So my dad was sitting in his Barcalounger, and the puppy came up and started kind of pawing his leg. And we would call it, and the dog ignored all of us. And my dad noticed that. My dad liked it when things, gave him respect. So he picked up the dog, kind of put it in his lap. And he looked at the dog and he goes, I'm not saying I like you. And the puppy kind of looked up at him, fell asleep in his lap. My dad fell asleep, and they were buddies after that. He would have these attachments, but he felt that he had to not show that things mattered to him. That the only thing that was supposed to matter to him was providing for his family and being strong. It was odd. Most people thought my father was taller than he was. And I was so amazed when Corky said that she had actually worked with him at Delmont Victor.
Yeah.
And she talked about the suit that he would wear. And, when my dad, him getting dressed to go to work, it was like his ritual. And through that, he taught me clothes do make the man and the woman. That when I'm going into a situation, what I wear adds to how I feel about myself. Which I see all the time when, like on special days when the kids who get on the bus or, they have to go to a presentation and they're all in their suits and, they're dressed up. And I could see them like, kind of being a little uncomfortable, but they stand a little bit taller. And when they get on the bus, I say, wow, what a sharp looking group. Man, if I were an employer, I'd hire every single one of you. And they stand a little taller, and they kind of pose a little bit. But it does matter how we present ourselves in this world, because people are going to judge. And for him, my father passed for white, absolutely, which made it that much more important for him that he embrace and demonstrate, that he was Black. And so, he always carried that kind of, I have to prove myself. I have to prove myself. And there's a part of me that wishes he didn't feel that, because he proved himself every single day. He proved himself when, the family that everybody judged, it was a woman who was younger than she appeared. She was, she had like 5 kids. They had come from Mexico. Her husband was absent. And my dad embraced that family. When their power was getting turned off, one of the kids came over. My dad walked over there. He talked to the PG&E people. He contacted their office. He made a deal. He paid for part of it. And, he worked something out with them. My dad didn't care if it was the totally dirty hand of a homeless person. He shook it. He didn't care what circumstances somebody was in because he saw their energy, because he read what was inside of them. He said that mother, she may have been in the same, old coat every time, but she made it to every PTA meeting. Everyone. And she worked hard. So, and my dad was the dad that everybody came to. And, he would help young people get jobs. And we're like, hey, Dad, how about you help us get a job? And he goes, no, they're not my children. You're my children. So you don't need my help to do that. And we thought that was highly unfair. And at the same time, it was that the lesson was, you have these tools. I've spent your whole life teaching you. Use them. When my father was passing, right before that, he had come to Louisiana where I was living. And it was such an amazing visit. We got to sit, we got to talk and all of that. And I knew something was going on with him. And there were things that he talked to me about that it was like, why are you talking to me about this stuff now? And when he went back to California, he ended up getting very sick. And I got a call saying he was hospitalized and that he didn't make it. So I hauled butt, got on a plane, came back to California. I came into the VA hospital and walked into the room and immediately, and my mom, she said that she knew I would immediately go in. And I took my father's hand and he was in an induced coma. And I said, Daddy, I'm here. And my mom said she knew he would wait for me. And as I held his hand and my younger brother had not gotten there yet, it's like, Dad, Andre's on his way. He'll be here soon. If you can wait for him, I know you got stuff to do, but if you can wait for him. And he waited. And I knew that my dad wasn't going to be with us long. And I also knew that his last gift to his best friend, my mother, because at that point, my mother was put into the position of whether or not she would be the one to say, to let him go, to remove life support. His mother, my grandmother, who had never been on a plane in her life, had flown out. And my mom said all she could do, because it was my mother's choice, that all she could do was look at my grandmother and say, I'm sorry. Because the next day she was going to make that decision to give the word. And I know my father didn't want that. So he passed that night. My younger brother begged my dad not to pass on his birthday, which was that day. So my dad waited till after midnight and passed. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, there was a big gathering, huge gathering in the city. They had, my father had been very involved with the city. They flew the flag at half-mast at the city hall. Mm. There were at least 300 people in this huge hall. And then all of a sudden they say, well, and now we're going to have somebody from the family come up and speak. My older brother, who we all figured, it's like, okay, Tony, you're on. And he's like, I'm not doing it. And the four of us are like, well, you do it. No, you do it. You do it. No, you do it. What about mom? Mom can't do it. We can't make mom do it. So they said, okay, you do it. And I got up and I walked up there and I stood at that podium And all I could think is, what do you people want from me? My daddy's gone.
Yeah.
And I heard my father saying, girl, don't you embarrass me. And so I closed my eyes and I took a deep breath. And my father came ringing through me, and my voice was his. And he talked about the importance of community. He talked about the importance. He talked about celebrating life. We talked about it. I have no clear knowledge of what words I said. My Uncle Bob was sitting there, and he said, your daddy was there. He said, because all of a sudden you changed. You stood straighter. There wasn't a tear in my eye as I spoke. And that taught me that even when we feel overwhelmed, we can call on that. Maybe you think about the most confident person you know and you become them. Now, when I need to get up and I need to call up that extra strength, I call on my father. And when I went back to Louisiana, I remember there was a day that all of a sudden I smelled a smell in the house, and it's like, what is that? I know that smell. It was Aramis, the cologne. That was my father's. He always wore Aramis, and I smelled it in the house, and I knew he was there. Years later, actually, exactly a decade later, when my mother was in the VA hospital and she was passing. And I looked out the window, and there was always something familiar about the view out that window, and I couldn't remember it. And then I remembered that it was the same view of the same tree in my father's room when he passed at the VA. And I asked, I said, did this used to be ICU? And she said, yes. And I said, my father passed in this room. And she said, they always felt something when they always came in and felt like my mother wasn't alone. And I could hear my father saying, you need to go home because she won't leave if you're here. She's with me. So I left because I knew that there was a hand holding my mother's and that she would be able to pass. Years later, when my grandmother passed, she started talking about seeing my father, that my father was coming and talking to her. And, she had come through a surgery. In fact, I was planning to go and surprise her for Thanksgiving by going out to see her. And by the time the plane landed, my phone was filled with messages that my grandmother had passed. And they were getting ready to discharge her. They had taken all the flowers out of her room. They came back with the wheelchair. They saw her laying on her side. But for a couple of days before then, she kept saying that my father had come and was talking to her. And he was the one who was there for her too. And when I think about the connection that is still there, Elton John was right. True love never dies. And thinking of that, in my vision of creator, yes, I grew up Catholic, so I view creator as male because I view the Blessed Mother as the female aspect. And that's just how I was raised and how I feel and how it resonates with me. And when I think, first off, my Father who art in heaven, yes, he is. Both of them. And thinking how tough it is for creator. In those moments when we ask creator, prove to me that you love me. I need to see something right now because I'm scared. Because I'm scared that you could get mad at me and then you would stop loving me. And to be able to calm ourselves down so we can hear that sweet, gentle presence saying, I will always love you. When my mom talked to me about the 3 ways that God answers prayers, it reminded me exactly of how my dad would respond. First, the answer is no, because what you're asking me for is not what's best for you. And I am willing to deal with you being mad at me because I know one day you'll understand that this wasn't the right thing for you. Second, not yet. It's like, oh, well, I want it now, Daddy. No, you can't have that now. We can't afford that now. You need to go out and, clean up and babysit and do stuff. That idea that just because we can't have it now doesn't mean there's value in gaining it. That means that we gain a gift from going through what we need to do. And I know my dad never wanted to see me suffer, ever. He would never want to see me suffer, but he knew there were times I had to in order to grow strong. He knew that telling me no and looking at that hurt little expression on my face, or telling me, no, you can't have that right now, meant that it wasn't a good thing for me to get now. And the third way that God answers prayers is I thought you'd never ask. My dad used to say the closed mouth doesn't get fed. If you want something, you need to say it. You need to let people know. You need to, yes, you take it into prayer, but you also let other people know that you could use some help, that you could use a hand. Sometimes, and my dad wasn't one to say a lot when he needed something, when he needed help, because of the fact he grew up at a point when, men did not admit they needed help. But he taught us to ask. You might say, get here, no, but, if you never ask, every answer's a no. I think of my dad often, and I feel his gentle presence. I think of Creator often, and I feel that gentle presence. Because sometimes I just go, hey, it's me, you got a minute? And it's always, sure. What is it, sweetie? And it's not even exactly a prayer. It's just like, I'm feeling kind of scared right now. I'm feeling kind of nervous about these things. And then I get that warm feeling of, I will always love you. And my dad may not have been able to say it in so many words, and I saw him demonstrate it more with his grandchildren. By the time my dad had grandchildren, I truly believe that he felt he was the dad he wanted to be, the one he dreamed of being. And I was happy for him that he got to experience that. So, as we consider those parental figures in our lives, that divine masculine, remembering that that's a vulnerable being that's in there just as much as we are, that being carries just as much light and shadow as we do. And when we turn to our Creator and we open ourselves to be that little child that says, I need help, I'm scared. And then we can sit and open ourselves up, because if we can get really nice and quiet and gentle, we can feel that there isn't one of us that's alone. And even though we don't, as my mother used to say, I don't know what's in the big book for me. She considered her life a big book. But I will always trust the one who's writing it. And I know there's a lot of people who have a lot of different relationships, and maybe not all of them are happy. Maybe some of them are very painful regarding fathers and father figures and things like that. I know that my dad was a very unique man, as everyone is. And even those who are hurtful to us teach us something. Maybe it's just, that's not how I choose to walk in this world. They help us have choice. They help us embrace our choice. And yes, the song leader of the band which we used to sing. And I always had such a hard time getting through that song because it reminded me so much of my dad. And he does live within me. He walks with me. He comforts me. He told me that he would love me forever, and he kept that promise.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yay.
Reverend Dr. Ayleen. And what you're telling us and what we can take in is that knowing of ourselves with the help of our ancestors, calling that, reminding us to call upon that for support and call upon that for healing. And what an incredible, incredible moment we have to do that actively for and with each other. And there are so many wonderful things in the chat that we might want to hear. And I just want to say a couple of things. One is we're going to pass the basket. Okay.
Well, I'll read the chat while we're doing that, okay?
Beautiful.
And so Mariamon said, good beautiful morning, and January's good morning all, good to see you, Doc. And Ayleen said, great to be here, thank you so much. Anyway, and Annie is good morning, so nice to see you all today. Stephen is, okay, well, something about the monitor. Please put Brandon in your prayer bowl, that's from Sky.
Great.
And
Brandon and
Patty and Joyce were saying hi to Glory, and Annie said hi to Glory, and Sky said, Dr. Reverend Ayleen, it is such a good treat to see you and listen to your wonderful story. And Stephen says, yes, I am needing this. And Annie says, thank you for the wonderful stories and talk today, Ayleen. Great inspiration and love. And Patty and Joyce said, wonderful. Oh, no, they didn't say wonderful. They said awesome.
beautiful.
Beautiful and powerful, heartwarming talk. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayleen, for sharing your story and your father's wisdom. I was just thinking, and Annie said she was just thinking about the leader of the band, and Scotty's Party, Dottie, I love you, Mama Boone, and Glory says, love, peace, blessings to all.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you, everyone.
And I just want to honor for each and every one of you these things that we put in the energy of healing and love and abundance for our wonderful CCL. You know, please think about contributing. Think about, you know, having that moment where you just even put in some energetic. So it can be real green energy or it can be energetic energy. We need it all
Or
to
through
be
Zelle
flowing.
or PayPal.
And
right?
Zelle and PayPal is
I just
another
looked
way
through
we
Zelle.
can
Zelle is
virtually.
no fees.
Beautiful.
Zelle is no fees.
Zelle is no fees. Thank you very much.
Straight wire transfer.
Dottie's phone
Right.
number,
Absolutely.
220-5780.
Remember that regular giving creates regular receiving.
Thank you.
We
Thank you, everyone.
thank you for your gifts. We thank you for receiving. Thank you for your gifts. We thank you for receiving. Thank you for your gifts. We thank you for receiving.
Thank you for your phone.
Yes, and go for it. My friends, I want to invite you, take a look at the speaker series. It was amazing. It was an incredible speaker
speaking of
series
the-
last
Of
Tuesday.
the speaker series, you're going to be the one that's going to be giving service next Sunday.
There you go.
Yeah, okay, now, next Sunday is, some of the people that are
Right.
normally here won't be here because they'll be doing the psychic fair.
That's
Yep.
right. So
over-
we're going to hold their energy
And,
and send it
but
to them.
then the people who are here,
That's
they
right.
will be able to have Jan, you know, of course, you could always put the recording too.
And my friends, our next speaker series is going to be Reverend Chris Brown talking about Jewish mysticism and the Kabbalah, which is an incredible topic. So I invite you to come to that. In
I
July.
just want to mention the speaker series. I did attend last Tuesday, and it was incredible to hear these people speak of their journey and how brave they are. And I really enjoyed it. There were me and one other person that were not gay, not involved, actively in the gay community. And it's if you choose to listen to that, you'll have a better understanding of the gay community and the people within it. As Gabrielle says, we're a very small portion, a very tiny portion of the world, and yet they fight the fight to be themselves, to be true to themselves. So it was incredibly interesting.
Thank you so much, Joan.
Yep.
And we want to give you all blessings, as you go forward in your week. Take your heart and surround it with love and healing and joy, and do something bad and decadent
I think
that's just for you.
I think Glory wanted to say something.
Oh, goody.
Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Go right ahead.
Glory, unmute. I can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Unmute, my dear. We can't hear you, honey. There you go.
Okay, maybe they're okay.
Thank you.
There you are.
I just really need to say love, peace, and blessings to all of you. And those of you who wherever it was, that was the celebration of my 12th week of recovering from the open heart surgery.
Yay!
And I want to say thank you all so much for all of the prayers and support. I have felt the love, okay, from all of you, and I appreciate it. And I pray for all of you every day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sometimes
Thank
I
you,
come up
Lori.
with names in particular, but otherwise I am like praying for my family members that love me all over the place. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Miss
so much.
Glory.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We miss you.
Okay, so
Now I have grandchildren and everything in the kitchen, so I'm going to leave you guys now.
Well, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day to all.
All right.
And Dr. Ayleen, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
the
my
wonderful talk.
one.
And
You're
as
incredible.
usual, you did an awesome job. Thank
Yes.
you. And so I think that we'll
wrap it
We'll
up.
be able to resume. No, what is it at the end? Exit. Anyway.
And thank you, Reverend Corky, for putting it all together.
You're welcome.
And just let Dottie know we love her.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So
okay, everyone.
be gentle.
Happy Father's Day to you all. I mean, all of you are in some way attached to some father. So.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.